What's up, Leaguers? Welcome to the Spectacular Spoiler League. I'm the Pandan Superman, the mayor of Hype City, HazyRome, and as always, I'm joined by the God of Night, the Prime Minister of Post-Production, DeepBoyce, and today, we're in the Hall of Spoilers to talk a little bit about Spider-Man Homecoming and some things you may not have noticed when you watch the movie. Potential plot holes, DeepBoyce. Some things about Spider-Man. Spider-Man Homecoming is not a perfect movie. We liked it, but it's not perfect.
No, not at all.
There's some things that it does.
There are a ton of things and there are a ton of Easter eggs, and you know, it's one of those movies that warrants multiple viewings. But there were a few things that kind of really stood out to
just a couple.
Yeah, the community out there.
Definitely. Let's start off with a Civil War Easter egg that you may not have noticed, right? So at the end of the movie, once again, spoilers for Spider-Man Homecoming. Hopefully you watched the movie before you clicked on this. So at the end of the movie, Tony Stark, he offers Peter Parker a spot on the Avengers, man. He's about to, shows him off this fantastic, so sexy new suit. Oh my God. I wanted to pull that suit off the screen and put it on my body. But he was about to, have a press conference essentially and announce Spider-Man as the newest Avenger. Now, all of us were like, oh, that's cool. But there's some things from Civil War you may have forgotten. So in Civil War, the Avengers had to sign the Sokovia Accords. Anyone who didn't sign the Sokovia Accords was labeled a criminal. And Peter Parker would have had to sign the Sokovia Accords if he was going to join up with the Avengers. Which means, I mean, you can't sign an official, United Nations document and sign sincerely Spider-Man on it. It can't take a copy of the Sokovia Accords and sign your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like, first name, friendly neighborhood, last name, Spider-Man. It wouldn't work. You know what I'm saying? He would have had to sign Peter Parker, which means if Peter had joined the Avengers, Tony would essentially have been outing his identity. Now, I don't know if he would have announced his identity as Peter Parker at that news conference, but I don't know if he would have said, hey, newest Avenger, everybody, Spider-Man, a.k.a. Peter Parker. But the dude would be signing a UN document, and essentially there'd be a bunch of countries, over 100 countries, who would know the identity of Spider-Man. Yeah. Whether or not it's released to the public is another story, but the whole idea is Peter Parker would essentially out his identity. And I'm not sure a lot of people realize that in him, potentially joining the Avengers. It's also a mini Easter egg to the Civil War comic book, where you have the Superhero Registration Act. Peter Parker initially sides with Iron Man, and as a result signs the Superhero Registration Act and reveals his identity to the world, to the public. So that was kind of like we didn't see that in Captain America Civil War, but that would have kind of been an allusion to, I think it was an allusion to the comic books and them kind of going in a different path, man.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, in the movie they kind of swerve you, I guess, a bit. It seems like they're not going to have an actual press conference, or he's just doing it just to test them. And then, Spider-Man ends up leaving without the suit, unfortunately.
I don't think he was testing him. I think he meant to do it. I think Spider-Man threw a wrench in Stark's plans.
But, I mean, didn't he ask him? Didn't he say, this is just a test, isn't it?
No, I think he was saying that because, he wanted to cover up for the fact that he really was going to reveal his identity. Or not reveal his identity, but really announce him as the newest Avenger. Yeah. Because when Tony Stark does say that, like, it's Peter Parker saying, oh, this was just a test, right? This was just a test. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then you have Pepper come out of the conference room like, yo, I've got a bunch of reporters. We need an announcement for them to actually, feel like we didn't just waste their time. And that's when the whole, Tony Stark proposed and the Pepper Potts thing is posited as the contingency plan, so to speak. But I'm pretty sure, based on Tony Stark's reaction, Robert Downey Jr.'s reaction, he was actually going to announce Spider-Man as the newest Avenger. I did not expect Peter to say no, but he did. But anyway, I think that was a little bit interesting thing there, because I'm like, was Tony about to just out his identity like that? Like,
but the Sokovia Accords, I guess they're still in effect, correct?
They have to be. I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming takes place, let's say it starts, let's say 2 months after the events of Civil War.
Does it now?
So Civil War. Say it again.
Does it now?
It does. It does. We're going to get into that a little bit later, because the timeline thing is another question. But it's supposed to take place. Peter basically, goes on that little trip with them during, I would say at the end of his freshman year, because he does say he has some type of test or something that he has to do in Captain America Civil War, and he says, I can't come. Then 2 months pass, and he's subsequently in school, presumably the next year of school. But timeline things are a little bit murky in Spider-Man Homecoming. Essentially, Captain America Civil War does take place roughly 2 months before Homecoming. But the idea is, the Sokovia Accords have now mandated that if you're going to operate as an Avenger legally, you have to sign. Tony signed, and in Captain America Civil War, you hear that Vision signed, War Machine signed, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Black Widow signed too. But in helping Team Cap, she basically made herself a fugitive. Black Panther reported her he reported her to the UN, and that essentially made her a fugitive. But on to our next point, okay? Not only was Tony Stark going to reveal Peter Parker's identity potentially, Tony Stark was also going to bring Peter Parker onto an Avengers team that got basically no Avengers. So this is the part that kind of had me cracking up, because after, a while after I came out the theater, I started thinking to myself, like, Tony was like, yeah, we're moving to this new facility. We've got this new Cap shield. They teased Cap having a new shield. They teased Thor getting this new belt. They're like, oh, Peter, you're going to be in a room right next to Vision. And I started thinking to myself, like, wait a second, who's actually on the Avengers? Because as we know with Captain America Civil War, Cap is a fugitive. Yeah. All right, so he's on the run.
Black Panther's
Ant-Man,
not an Avenger.
No, Black Panther's not an Avenger. He went back to Wakanda, and you're going to see in the events of Black Panther that, he basically had to do with his rise to the throne. He's not an Avenger. He never officially joined the Avengers. Ant-Man, definitely a fugitive. Hawkeye, fugitive. Scarlet Witch, fugitive. Black Widow, fugitive. Falcon, fugitive. You know what I'm saying? They're all criminals. They're all on the run. They all broke the Sokovia Accords or were operating against the UN's wishes. We know War Machine signed, but War Machine kind of had some problems at the end of Civil War. He potentially got paralyzed. So something happened to him. I don't know where he stands now, but his participation on the Avengers is questionable, given that he may not be able to have full control over his body. And then that really just leaves, maybe Hulk, Thor, and Vision. Now, Hulk, we don't know where he is. We have no idea where he is. I mean, obviously with Thor Ragnarok, he's not on planet Earth. When we hear Secretary Ross actually saying Captain America Civil War, he says, essentially says, I think he says it's Captain America. He says, tell me, Captain, do you know where Thor and Banner are right now? If I misplaced a couple of 30 megaton nukes, you can bet there'd be consequences. Compromise, reassurance, that's how the world works. Believe me, this is the middle ground. Now, why would Secretary Ross say that if we all knew where, Thor and Hulk were? The fact of the matter is, we don't know where they are, and I don't know if they're actually on the Avengers. So what that leaves is basically, we know Iron Man and Vision are the only two members of the Avengers who are actually operating as Avengers right now.
True.
So I don't know who Tony expected them to be joining. Now, that being said, expected Peter Parker to be joining. Now, that being said, the fact that in moving stuff from Avengers Towers to new Avengers facility, Happy Hogan, he's doing the inventory for the things that are going to be moved. And as I said before, he said Cap's new shield and a new belt for Thor. Now, makes complete sense that they'd be making some new equipment for Thor, sure. Maybe even makes sense that they were making equipment for Captain America. But the thought I had was, maybe is Captain America, is Tony still low-key supporting Cap? Because why would he, I mean, if he has a new shield for Captain America, maybe he was working on this before Civil War happened. Maybe it's possible. But I thought, is there something going on there? Is Captain America possibly, still working with Tony Stark behind the scenes there? I don't know.
Most likely.
I don't know if he's...
And another question I have is, to what capacity are the Avengers working under? I mean, weren't they an initiative started by Nick Fury and the Avengers? I mean, who did they switch hands to? Who's leading them? Who's funding them?
See, that's the question. I mean, Tony Stark eventually was funding them by Age of Ultron and essentially Civil War. He was definitely in the funding position. But the idea is with the Avengers now separated, and most of the Avengers, operating. If they are operating, they're operating in secret. By the way, I mentioned, and I didn't mention Winter Soldier, but in case you're thinking of him, he's on freeze in Wakanda. So, I mean, the bottom line is we don't know where the Avengers stand right now. We don't know what's going on with them. Tony was given a burner phone by Captain America at the end of Civil War. So, in theory, he may actually be in contact with Cap still. Cap told Tony in a letter that he wrote with the burner phone, he said, if you ever need me, I'm always here. And he gave him a phone. Yeah. So it's reasonable to believe that maybe Tony is not being straightforward and honoring the Sokovia Accords to their fullest. But legally, let's say, I think the only legal Avengers right now, or the people allowed to operate as Avengers, are Iron Man, Vision, and War Machine. So essentially, Tony Stark ain't got nobody on his squad. He's probably banking on Peter Parker joining up with the Avengers, because ain't nobody on the Avengers.
That we know of.
That we know of, right? Because there could always be other characters that have been. I mean, Doctor Strange is out there somewhere.
Doctor Strange is out there. I mean,
he could have been recruited without us
realistically, next movie's Thor Ragnarok. Probably not going to answer this question. Then we're getting Black Panther. Probably not going to answer this question. And then we're going straight into Avengers Infinity War. Probably not going to answer this question. Or maybe it might allude to it. Who knows? But
we're going to see some new Avengers. We're definitely going to see Wasp. We're going to see... maybe not Avengers. We're going to see some new characters. We're going to see Wasp. We're also going to see Captain Marvel. For sure.
Yes. Forgot about her. She probably is an Avenger at this point.
You think so?
Or they have her in the pocket. I wouldn't be surprised if Tony Stark, the way he had Peter Parker in the pocket, he has Captain Marvel waiting there.
All right, man. But the bottom line is we just don't know who's on the Avengers right now. I just thought it was a funny thought. Like, the Avengers are essentially like 3 dudes.
And I think
2.5.
And given that Captain America is a war criminal or a fugitive, Captain Marvel, she could be a good stand-in as a leader for the new Avengers.
Agreed. And I think honestly her characterization would have her sign the Sokovia Accords. So but yeah. Anyway, the last thing that I noticed about Spider-Man Homecoming, and I'm definitely not the only person that notices, is the issues with the timeline in Spider-Man Homecoming. So Spider-Man Homecoming seems to have broken the MCU timeline. Now, some people care about this, some people don't. I don't blame you.
Surprised it took this long. I'm surprised they kept everything together up until this point.
But the thing is, it seems like such a glaring omission. So basically, to preface things, Kevin Feige has come out and said before that, essentially, the release dates of most of the MCU films coincide with, the time that they're released in real time. For example, Iron Man was released in 2008, and the movie is said to have taken place in 2008. The Avengers was released in 2012, and we thought the Avengers would have taken place in 2012 as well. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming, and introducing us to the character of Adrian Toomes, he essentially loses a huge contract to clean up after the Battle of New York, aka the results of the Avengers, which we had dated to be 2012. So, Damage Control comes in, they take away his contract. He subsequently, it's assumed that he had financial issues by them taking his contract away, and he turns to a life of crime by selling Chitauri weaponry. Now, after we see this flashback of him having an interaction with Damage Control, it flashes to the future and says 8 years later. Now, 8 years after the assumed date when Avengers takes place, and subsequently the cleanup process of the Battle of New York, would have been 2020, which would have put Spider-Man Homecoming also in 2020, because we see Peter Parker, we see the events of Civil War in a funny montage played through his point of view, and then 2 months later, we see him back at school, back to his normal life. So presumably, it would have taken place in, let's say, 2020. Now, that creates a problem because we know that Spider-Man Homecoming don't take place in 2020. It seems like it does take place in 2017. Okay. So where does that put the Avengers and the whole MCU timeline?
Okay, well, see, maybe the easiest thing to do is to move back the Avengers
Right. That seems to be the general
to
solution.
2009, which would allow us to have Spider-Man: Homecoming in 2017.
Right.
That's probably the easiest thing to do. I mean, Incredible Hulk. That you don't really get any idea of when that happens, and it's almost like that movie doesn't really count in a way. That was the one with Edward Norton as
now people say that, and it is kind of like the ugly duckling of the MCU movies. But the biggest validation of Incredible Hulk. Oh, that Incredible Hulk. Talking about some sexy men out here. The Incredible Hulk is the fact that Thunderbolt Ross is now Secretary Ross in Captain America: Civil War. Because remember, he was the main antagonist in the Incredible Hulk. So he actually came back to the MCU. So a lot of people kind of throw out Incredible Hulk and say, oh, is that part of the MCU? It is definitively part of the MCU, despite Ed Norton being cast. Also, Tony Stark appears at the end of that. So, you know, you can't really, he does a cameo in that one.
True.
But, yes. So, the theory right now is people are moving back Iron Man and Avengers to be the same year. Now, that could create a whole lot of continuity issues that I don't know about. Because, there definitely have been, like, newsreels and things that have appeared, in the MCU that also might affect the events of shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and things like that, too. Because, if you think about it, it would be cramming a lot of years of story into a short amount of time if, Iron Man, Thor, and the end of the first Avenger, Captain America, the first Avenger, and Incredible Hulk are taking place roughly around the same time. So the theory that I'm hearing right now that I see that's prevalent is that Iron Man takes place in 2008 with maybe Tony revealing his identity somewhere at the end of 2000 or beginning of 2009.
Yes.
The Avengers taking place in 2009. Civil War taking place in 2017. And thus Spider-Man Homecoming also taking place in 2017, a full 8 years later. There's also the issue of... So they announced this recent Easter egg. They kind of, retconned it into existence, where Peter Parker was essentially in Iron Man 2. Now, let me explain. So, essentially, during the Stark Expo, when, Iron Man is fighting off Ivan Vanko's rogue robots, or Iron Bots, or whatever you want to call them, Tony Stark saves a little kid in an Iron Man mask, who, is bravely standing up, or stupidly, standing up to an Iron Man bot. He saves him and he goes, nice shot, kid, right? So he, knocks out the bot and he goes, nice shot, kid. So Kevin Feige came out and said that kid was actually Peter Parker. Cool retcon, except that when you look at, like, the MCU timeline, you look at the age of Tom Holland as it stood before the Homecoming retcon, it kind of didn't make sense to this little kid. I mean, the kid looked like, couldn't have been,
maybe 6.
More than what? Maybe 6 or something like that, 7. But, Iron Man 2 came out, I believe, in 2010. So that would have put, Peter Parker at about maybe 10 years old. And that kid did not look 9 or 10 years old. So that was kind of an issue there. But this, Iron Man, Avengers moving back kind of solves it. And you brought up something about Liz Allen's character.
Yeah.
And a plot device in Spider-Man Homecoming that's kind of important.
Yeah, I mean, Liz Allen in Spider-Man Homecoming is a senior, so she's 17 probably at the youngest, or maybe she's 16. Maybe she's a little advanced, I guess, in terms of her studies.
Maybe. Typically senior 17, 18.
And in the beginning of the movie, or I guess when when the first Avengers movie ends, and you see her father, Adrian Toomes, with his team cleaning up the Chitauri mess, he takes a glance at a picture drawn by a child, like a very young child. It looks maybe a child who's at maybe at least 5, 6 years old. It's a very crude drawing.
It's a very crude picture, yeah, very crude drawing.
To be fair, I can't probably draw. I'm 28 and I probably can't draw any better than that. But that's besides the point. And now, this isn't confirmed, but it's assumed that was his daughter Liz Allen who drew that again 8 years ago. And if she is 17 at the youngest, then she was maybe 9 years old when she drew that. And it's hard to believe that a 9-year-old drew some chicken scratch like that, or even had that idea.
Damn, you don't know your 9-year-olds very well, man.
I mean,
'Cause when I was 9-year-old, I can't even color. I'm 27. I still can't color in the lines, bro. I still can't cut on the line, my man. I don't know how I made it out of school.
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, that was not confirmed, but it's up in the air. It would just be kind of weird as to why would he be looking at this random drawing from a kid who the hell drew this?
Yeah.
But again,
the timeline change would, like, it being 8 years does kind of account a little bit for her drawing looking like that, because she'd be like 9 or 10, but it still looks pretty. I mean, I know some 9 or 10-year-olds that don't draw that grid either, but you're getting into semantics here. I mean, it's a good point, but like, I think the bottom line when it comes to things like this is that, like, you can't rack your brain over it. That being said, with the care they take with the MCU, I'm really surprised they let something like that fly. And I don't know if they are. They may be aware now of the quote unquote retcon. I don't know how aware of it they were when they let this rock.
Well,
it seems like an oversight. The fact that no one has said anything about it, it does seem like an oversight.
Well, there's two things that they could do here that are somewhat simple. Excuse me.
Dan, DeepBoyce is allergic to all the retcon changes going on in the MCU, guys. He's coughing me sick to his stomach right now.
I've had enough with like Hideo Kojima and his Metal Gear Solid retcons, but two things they could do. One, Kevin Feige could say, you know what, forget about Peter. I lied. Peter Parker was not Iron Man 2, right? That probably,
He's not going to do that.
Oh, you don't think so?
Nah, I don't think so. Why would he do that? I mean,
I personally,
why would he come out to say it and then not come out to say it? Maybe unless he said he was unless he was like, oh, I'm joking.
True. I mean, I personally, it's not gonna really bother me if he's just like, oh, forget it. I mean, it's getting a little too complicated and crazy. I'll just
fair enough.
It doesn't count
because it's not official.
Yeah, it's not official.
It's just an Easter egg.
And then
a retcon one at that.
And then the other one for, I guess, the drawing, which is really much more up in the air. Maybe Adrian Toomes was married before and had another kid. Like, maybe there's a kid from a previous marriage. I don't know. And,
that's possible. That's entirely possible.
Drawing was from.
It's entirely possible. You don't know. You never know. It could have been someone else's drawing. I mean, it could have been one of his staff mates, his crewmates drawing. Let me stop. It could have been the crew. It could have been one of the children of the crew that he had. But I honestly do think it's intended to be Liz Allen's drawing to kind of give you. In watching a second time, you probably be like, oh, that must be her drawing. But I think it was to tie in that, idea of family for him and him looking at his kids looking up to the Avengers. I mean, anyway, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys think about some of the things we pointed out in the movie. What else did you notice anything about the movie that seemed inconsistent or seemed a little bit odd or off? Let us know what you think about some of the things we said today, and let us know if you have any solutions to some of the issues or plot holes or things we noticed about Spider-Man Homecoming. By all means, if you liked anything you heard today, hit us with subscribe, join up with the Spectacular Spoiler League in the Hall of Spoilers, chill with us, talk about children's drawings with us, draw some pictures for us. I mean, we'll hang them up on our refrigerator, put some nice Iron Man Avenger magnets on the fridge with your pictures on it. That'd be kind of nice. We're
family here, so feel free to drawing pictures of the whole league together.
There we go. Exactly. If you like what you heard today, hit us with a like. We greatly appreciate it. And by all means, like I said, drop us a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what you want to see from us. We'll see you guys on the next one. We're getting out of the Hall of Spoilers. We're going to go talk to Liz Allen, make sure she drew that picture. We're going to ask her why her drawing skills are so lackluster. We getting out of here, guys.